بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين أتريدون أن تجعلوا لله عليكم سلطانا مبينا إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار ولن تجد لهم نصيرا إلا الذين تابوا وأصلحوا واعتصموا بالله وأخلصوا دينهم لله فأولئك مع المؤمنين وسوف يؤتي الله المؤمنين أجرا عظيما ما يفعل الله بعذابكم إن شكرتم وآمنتم وكان الله شاكرا عليما لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم وكان الله سميعا عليما وكان الله سميعا عليما إن تبدوا خيرا أو تخفوه أو تعفوا عن سوء فإن الله كان عفوا قديرا إن الذين يكفرون بالله ورسله ويريدون أن يفرقوا بين الله ورسله ويقولون نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض ويريدون أن يتخذوا بين ذلك سبيلا أولئك هم الكافرون حقا وأعتدنا للكافرين عذابا مهينا والذين آمنوا بالله ورسله ولم يفرقوا بين أحد منهم أولئك سوف يؤتيهم أجورهم وكان الله غفورا رحيما يسألك أهل الكتاب أن تنزل عليهم كتابا من السماء فقد سألوا موسى أكبر من ذلك فقالوا أرنا الله جهرة فأخذتهم الصاعقة بظلمهم ثم اتخذوا العجل من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات فعفونا عن ذلك وآتينا موسى سلطانا مبينا ورفعنا فوقهم الطور بميثاقهم وقلنا لهم ادخلوا الباب سجدا وقلنا لهم لا تعدوا في السبت وأخذنا منهم ميثاقا غليظا فبما نقضهم ميثاقهم وكفرهم بآيات الله وقتلهم الأنبياء بغير حق وقولهم قلوبنا غلف بل طبع الله عليها بكفرهم فلا يؤمنون إلا قليلا وبكفرهم وقولهم على مريم بهتانا عظيما وقولهم إنا قتلنا المسيح عيسى ابن مريم رسول الله وما قتلوه وما صلبوه ولكن شبه لهم وإن الذين اختلفوا فيه لفي شك منه ما لهم به من علم إلا اتباع الظن وما قتلوه يقينا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
बर मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद सलावत। खुदा के दी का ना खुदा, हर इब्तिदा की इब्तिदा, करम की इंतहा हुसैन है। न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। बक़ाए ला इला हुसैन है, न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। करे जो कोई हमसरी, किसी की क्या मजाल है। जहाँ में हर लिहाज से हुसैन बेमिसाल है। ये हो चुका है फैसला, ये हो चुका है फैसला, न कोई दूसरा खुदा, न कोई दूसरा हुसैन है। न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। बक़ाए ला इला हुसैन है, न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। क़ज़ा के बाद फिर मुझे नई हयात मिल गई। फिशार से अज़ाब से मुझे निजात मिल गई। सवाल जब किया गया है कौन तेरा रहनुमा, तो मैंने कह दिया हुसैन है। न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है जिसकी फिक्र करबला, हुसैन वो दिमाग है। ये पंजतन की अंजुमन का पांचवा चिराग है। हसन का पहला हम सफ़र, अली का दूसरा पिसर, इमाम तीसरा हुसैन है। न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, बिना ला इला हुसैन है। शहीद करबला का गम, पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। बक़ाए ला इला हुसैन है, न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। बर मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद सलावत।
सलवात बर मोहम्मद वाले व दीगर सलवात।
खुदा की राह में कारे नुमायाँ ऐसे होते हैं। खुदा की राह में कारे नुमायाँ ऐसे होते हैं। तहे खंजर किए सजदे मुसलमान ऐसे होते हैं। वो प्यारी प्यारी शक्लें देख कर आले पैगंबर की, वो प्यारी प्यारी शक्लें देख कर आले पैगंबर की। सितारों ने कहा ऐ चाँद इंसान ऐसे होते हैं। मुसाफिर का तने बेसर है और शब का अंधेरा है। मुसाफिर का तने बेसर है और शब का अंधेरा है। किसी की लाश पर गैसू परेशान ऐसे होते हैं। कदम पर शह के दम निकला हबीब इब्ने मज़ाहिर का। कदम पे शह के दम निकला हबीब इब्ने मज़ाहिर का। मोहब्बत के वफा के अहद पैमा ऐसे होते हैं। खुदा ही जाने दिल से क्या कहा होगा निगाहों ने। खुदा ही जाने दिल से क्या कहा होगा निगाहों ने। सकीना को खबर क्या थी कि जिंदा ऐसे होते हैं। सुनाकर नज्म किस्सा करबला वाले शहीदों का। सुनाकर नज्म किस्सा करबला वाले शहीदों का। मुसलमानों को समझा तूं मुसलमान ऐसे होते हैं। खुदा की राह में कारे नुमायाँ ऐसे होते हैं। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम। सलावत। सलावत। कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। 18 बरस पाल के परवान चढ़ाया। वो गेसुओं वाला है मेरा, खून में नहाया। ये क्या हुआ दिलबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। माँ तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी। मर जाएगी सुगरा जो खबर तेरी सुनेगी। अब क्या करूं जी कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। इतना तो जरा ठहरो तुम्हें दुल्हा बना लूं। बस एक झलक सहर की सुगरा को दिखा लूं। बेचैन थी ख्वाहर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। माँ तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी। मर जाएगी सुगरा जो तेरी खबर सुनेगी। अब क्या करूं ख्वाहर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। पहले तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा, अब ते पहले तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा। अब इतनी सदाओं पे भी पहलू नहीं बदला। क्या हो गया दिलबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। हाय हाय अली अकबर। सलावत।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are gathered here to commemorate the Azaa of Sayyid al-Shuhada Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is the sixth night we are gathered together, and we'll continue until 9th of August. Lecture is by our visiting alim Maulana Muhammad Raza Himyari. Inshallah, we'll continue from tomorrow. Just note the change of timing. Tomorrow is Thursday. We'll start at 8:15. 8:15 we'll start with the Shab-e Jummah recitation, Kumail and Yasin, inshallah. Then we have Jamaat Salat, and the majlis will be after the program, after the Jamaat Salat. So from tomorrow until 9th, the majlis will be after Jamaat Salah. We'll start with Jamaat Salah from Friday onwards, inshallah. And we have the namaz first, and all the majlis will be after the namaz, inshallah, from tomorrow onwards, inshallah. Tomorrow being Thursday, we'll start at 8:15. Beside that, from Friday onwards, we'll start with Maghrib Salat, inshallah, which will be 8:54 on the Friday. Ladies program is every day. It starts at 10:30, and Zakira Narjis Karim is the speaker. For donations, I've been requesting if anyone wants to donate in general fund. We have credit, debit card, check, cash, whatever works for you. We can accommodate that. And if you want to sponsor any specific day, although most of the days are already taken, but if you want, we can still, inshallah, work out that, and you can contact us. Calendars are here for the this Hijra year, new Hijra year. So they are available at the front desk. It's $3 per calendar or $5 for 2 calendars. So if anyone interested, you can contact anyone in the management. Now, without further ado, I'll request Sheikh to start his lecture with your loud salawat. Allah.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In these past few nights, we have been talking about the legacy of the Prophet of Islam, and in particular, as Allah has expressed it in these ayat of Surah An-Nur, as the manifestation of those people in His creation, among the creation of Allah, who have harnessed the light, who have harnessed the light of Allah Himself. That hidayah and that taqwa that Allah has made a requirement for all of His creation. The consciousness and the awareness of Allah Himself. And we said that one of the means by which human beings stray away from Allah is through forgetting Allah Himself, by losing this taqwa and this consciousness of Allah. This is one of the diseases of not just the Muslims, but the entire world. It's a disease which affects us on an individual level, on a communal level, and sometimes on a societal level. One of the remedies that Allah has placed for the believers, in particular the Muslims, is Allah has said to look at history. Look at all of those blessings that Allah has given to you. Recited the ayat about Bani Israel last night. Allah tells Bani Israel, think about and contemplate, reflect on your history as a people. All of those prophets and the messages that those prophets brought to you as a people. And that will open your heart, make you aware of the blessings that Allah has placed in your lives, and through that then you can come closer to Allah and accept that light that Allah is commanding you to harness. Said that this is also one of the commandments for the Muslims themselves, to remember the legacy of the Prophet of Islam. One of the means by which Allah continues this legacy is by this daily prayer. Said that, according to certain reports from the Ahlul Bayt, this 5 prayers that we do on a daily basis breaks up our day. This is to remind us of that message of the Prophet of Islam. The Prophet of Islam, Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, says in a famous report, the Prophet says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray in the form that you see me pray. This begins with a physical prayer. The physical form that the Prophet used to pray, we pray in that same way. The way that the Prophet would begin his prayer with a takbir. And then he would bow down towards Allah. And then he would place the highest part of his body, his physical body, upon the ground to show his humility towards Allah. But of course, the prayer of the Prophet is not just physical. The body of the Prophet represents, the movements of the Prophet represent something deeper within the Prophet's heart. And so when the Prophet says, Rasulullah says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, it's not simply to follow the actions of the Prophet, but rather it is to also follow those intentions. The spiritual journey back towards Allah through the prayer. He said that we do actions in our lives as Muslims. We do actions not for the action's sake. We don't simply pray or fast to have prayed and fasted. We pray and fast to recreate ourselves, to transform our souls in terms of that prayer. So when we think about Allah, we automatically have that humility. When we think about our responsibility towards Allah, we automatically think that we are falling short. That's the ultimate goal. We have to transform ourselves as human beings into the being of, as much as we can, as similar as we can, into the character of the Prophet of Islam. That khulq and the akhlaq of the Prophet. We see that one of the, again, illnesses of the Muslim Ummah that struck the Muslim Ummah was that right after Rasulullah had passed away, that the Muslims began to forget. They began to move away, whether on purpose or just because of the passage of time. They began to forget that legacy of the Prophet. And so it was the mission of the Ahlul Bayt, the task of Amirul Mu'mineen and the rest of the Ahlul Bayt to continue that legacy and that memory of the Prophet, both in their teachings and in themselves. That was the legacy of the Ahlul Bayt. And so we see time and time again, when Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, sees that, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When Amirul Mu'mineen sees that the Muslims are turning back towards those same loyalties towards their tribes and their families, he tries to swerve them towards the memory of the Prophet. Tries to say that the taqwa is that highest honor. Loyalty towards tribe and towards kin is fine, but that should be at a second level to your responsibility and your relationship with Allah. You see that right after the Prophet's death, the same tribalism and tribal loyalty rears its head once again. And time again, Amirul Mu'mineen gives this same message. In fact, when the Shura, when the council of the companions of the Prophet had gathered to select the Khalifa after the second Khalifa's death, these are very beautiful words and very insightful words of Amirul Mu'mineen's mission. When that council gathered, Amirul Mu'mineen was asked, will you abide by these certain conditions that we have placed? Should think about Amirul Mu'mineen's response. He says, my only task, if I were to accept the Khilafah, the leadership of the Muslim Ummah, the political leadership of the Muslim Ummah, is that I will abide by and I will carry through that Kitab of Allah and Sunnat Nabiyyah. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Usiru fikum bi kitabillah wa sunnati nabiyhi mastata'tu. I don't place any other conditions upon the political leader, not just the spiritual leader, but even at the lowest level, the political leadership of the Muslim Ummah should be based upon Kitab Allah wa Sunnat Nabiyyah. And I will abide by this. I will proceed with these two criteria as much as I can. It's that same legacy of the Prophet. Amirul Mu'mineen is saying, stick to that legacy. You don't need really anything else. Stick to that legacy as much as you can. And so when we think about taqwa, that spiritual legacy of the Prophet of Islam, we can't but look at the character of Amirul Mu'mineen, of Imamul Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. That's why we call him Imamul Muttaqeen, the Imam of the pious. You see that, again, throughout his life, he enacted and showed the Muslims, manifested what it means to be truly pious. There are many instances. Amirul Mu'mineen's daily prayers during the time of the Prophet of Islam and even after. Amirul Mu'mineen's nightly conversations with Allah, where he would describe and expressed to Allah his deep yearning for Allah, and even his asking for forgiveness of Allah for his own shortcomings. Tomorrow night is the night of Kumail. It's the night of Thursday in which we recite this dua Kumail. Sometime when you get a chance, read what Amirul Mu'mineen describes in terms of his shortcomings in the face of Allah, in the court of Allah, and how he asks Allah for forgiveness. Amirul Mu'mineen, who was the legacy and the heir of the Prophet of Islam, is even himself asking for forgiveness, for he has fallen short. This is true taqwa. And so, you see that in the being and in the character of Amirul Mu'mineen, in his actions, Amirul Mu'mineen expresses, Imam Ali expresses what it means to be pious. But even in his words, and especially in his words, you see that Amirul Mu'mineen describes time and time again what that source of the Muslim Ummah is supposed to be. In a famous episode that's narrated in different books, Amirul Mu'mineen is approached by one of his companions, a man by the name of Hammam. And this companion was known as a person who was himself already an abid, a worshipper, and a zahid, a person who was an ascetic. He had divorced himself from the world, and he had devoted himself to the worship of Allah. So this isn't just a normal person. It's not just a person who was involved in the world and so on and so forth. He had already begun that path of taqwa. And Hammam, this companion of Imam Ali, he asks the Imam, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, describe for me who these muttaqeen are that Allah continues to mention in the Quran. Who are these muttaqeen, these pious? Amirul Mu'mineen, when he looks at Hammam, he sees that, it might be a little difficult for Hammam to accept. And so he tries to, one way or another, tries to avoid the question. And then Hammam persists. For people who had started, as I mentioned yesterday, we think about our task in this world as trying to acquire a skill. Think about, for example, a sculptor. A sculptor takes a marble block and he begins to chisel away. He acquires a skill and he begins to chisel away. And it takes time, months, maybe even sometimes years of chiseling away at this stone, until finally something beautiful appears. It takes time and it takes persistence. This is the same task that a human being has in this world. It takes time to chisel away at your soul. And so for a person who has begun that process, they've chiseled away, they've worked on their soul, they've tried to take away all of those weeds of their soul, those vices, those evil characteristics, and they've tried to persist in the good. And then after maybe 30, 40 years, they try to reflect to see how much and how far they have come. So Hammam now is asking for Amirul Mu'mineen to try to see how far he has come. Maybe he can even be counted as among the muttaqeen. And then Amirul Mu'mineen is evading the question. So Hammam persists. And then Amirul Mu'mineen says this, Ya Hammam, ittaqillah wa ahsin, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Imam Ali says, O Hammam, have piety, be aware of God, and do good, ahsin, meaning do good behavior, beautiful behavior. Be a beautiful person. He says, for Allah, He is with those who have taqwa, and with those who are muhsin, who do good. It's a very kind of short and to the point message. He says all of those things that you already know about taqwa, do those. Don't ask for more. And then Hammam persists until a point when Amir al-Mu'mineen has no other choice. And he says this khutbah, it's a very long and one of the most beautiful khutbahs in which Amir al-Mu'mineen describes the characteristics of the muttaqeen. Until he gets to such a point that Hammam, according to this riwayah, he falls unconscious. He says, I have spent my life, however long I have lived, I have devoted myself to Allah, and I still haven't reached this characteristic. I still haven't acquired that characteristic of taqwa. And so Hammam, it is said, according to this hadith, falls unconscious. He said that taqwa is a process. And we ask Allah to help us in that process. And this is the message of Imam Ali. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What was so difficult to understand? What was so difficult to grasp? Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, he begins with a disposition. He says, if you really want to understand what taqwa is, what piety is, you have to orient your soul in a particular way. And he begins with our orientation towards Allah. How do we understand Allah's relationship towards us, His actions towards us? Sometimes when we think we pray or we fast, we're doing Allah a favor. He said that Allah has commanded me and I have responded. And so what else does He want from me? Amir al-Mu'mineen begins. He says, Allah has created His creation without any need from them. He has bestowed them with His grace and His compassion. He didn't need anything from us for Him to create us. And then He has given us provision after provision, food and shelter, wealth as much as we need. And He never needed any of this from us. And then He has given us guidance. And He gives particular guidance to those who He knows can benefit from it. This ayah of Surah An-Nur, it says, لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. These people who have harnessed that light of Allah, they do these acts so that Allah may reward them better than that which they have done. وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. And He will even increase them in and from His grace, beyond that which they have done. The grace of Allah is something that Allah does not owe to us. وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. This is the same idea that Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, expresses in these first words. He says, أَمَّا بَعْدْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ الْخَلْقَ حِينَ خَلَقَهُمْ غَنِيًّا عَنْ طَاعَتِهِمْ. Allah created His creation. When He created them, He was fully independent of their worship. آمِنًا مِنْ مَعْصِيَتِهِمْ. And He was at the same time protected and safe from their disobedience. Amir al-Mu'mineen continues, فَقَسَمَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَعَايِشَهُمْ وَوَضَعَهُمْ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا مَوَاضِعَهُمْ. And He distributed as He sees fit, according to His own wisdom, all of their livelihood, their wealth, their food, and so on. And He placed them in certain areas according to His wisdom, according to how He knows they will respond to that blessing. And then the Imam continues, فَالْمُتَّقُونَ هُمْ أَهْلُ الْفَضَائِلِ. The Imam, he gives us an insight into what taqwa is all about. Taqwa isn't some idea. It's not something that we think about. It's something that we have to enact in our lives. We have to live by it. And so for us to live by it, Allah gives us examples of people, living examples. Ahlul taqwa al-muttaqun hum ahlul fada'il. Throughout the Quran, Allah talks about people. Al-muttaqun. People who do this throughout their lives. And then Amirul Mu'mineen says, if you want to think about taqwa, it's not just something you do at the masjid. It's not even something you do when you are worshipping Allah. It's something that seeps throughout your entire being. And he gives very precise examples. He says, mantiquhum as-sawab. Their speech is true. وَمَلْبَسُهُمْ al-iqtisad. And their clothing is economical. It's exactly right. It's neither too wealthy nor is it too poor. وَمَشْيُهُمْ التَّوَاضُعُ. And even the way they walk. Listen to what Amirul Mu'mineen says. He's describing the different parts of our body. He doesn't just say, your heart has taqwa. Your mind has taqwa. He says every single part of your body. If you want to think about true taqwa, every single part of your body must be touched by that consciousness. وَمَشْيُهُمْ التَّوَاضُعُ. Even the way they walk is in terms of humility and modesty. غَضُّوا أَبْصَارَهُمْ. They lower their gaze. عَمَّا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. They lower even their eyes is aware and conscious. They have chiseled their soul so much that even their eyes, without a reflection, a moment of reflection, they lower their eyes from that which Allah has forbidden from them. وَوَقَفُوا أَسْمَاءَهُمْ. Their ears, عَلَى الْعِلْمِ النَّافِعِ لَهُمْ. Even their ears. Every single part of their body has been touched by this taqwa. And then he talks about their state and their soul in different parts of their life. نَزَلَتْ أَنفُسُهُمْ مِنْهُمْ فِي الْبَلَاءِ كَالَّذِي نَزَلَتْ فِي الرَّخَاءِ. They have worked on their soul so much. They have oriented their soul so much towards Allah that without a moment's reflection, they realize that if Allah places them in hardship, Allah is always watching. And if Allah places them in comfort, Allah is as well always watching. At every moment in their life, whether in comfort or in difficulty, their soul is the same. They respond the same. It's a long khutbah. Inshallah, if we have time, we can go through the rest of the khutbah. But again, we don't simply think about these things in our mind. We look for living examples so that we can emulate them and imitate their behavior. We said that the journey of Imam Hussein is the best example of that same legacy of the Prophet. Each one of the companions of Imam Hussein expressed that taqwa throughout that journey. One of the best examples of those people who, in times of difficulty and ease, their hearts and souls was the same, was Lady Zainab, the sister of Imam Hussein. It is said that during even the time of her grandfather, Rasulullah, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When Lady Zainab was born, from those very moments, Lady Zainab was made close to and was made to love Imam Hussein, to never separate from his side. They said that one day, Lady Zainab came to her father, Amirul Mu'mineen. It's the final moments of her father's life. Those moments when Ibn Muljam had struck the head of Amirul Mu'mineen, and Amirul Mu'mineen was lying on his bed. Lady Zainab came to Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, and she asked the Imam, she said, "Oh Amirul Mu'mineen, oh my father, I had heard a story from the wife of Rasulullah, Ayman. In this report, Lady Zainab comes to her father and asks him. She says, "Is this story true? I want to hear it from your own mouth, from your own lips." Ayman told me that there's going to be a day in which I am going to be taken and I'm going to follow my brother Hussein. And there's going to be trial after trial, tragedy after tragedy that's going to befall us. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, is this prophecy true? And Imam Ali responds, "Yes, O Zainab. This prophecy is true and you are going to follow your brother. But O Zainab, your tragedy and your difficulties will not end with the death of Imam Hussein, with the death of Aba Abdullah. Your tragedy and your journey continues after Karbala. O Zainab, have patience, for you will be dragged throughout the cities in Kufa and in Sham." So Zainab, have patience. Lady Zainab, it is said, never left the side of Imam Hussein, even when she was getting married to Abdullah ibn Ja'far. Her only condition was that, "O Abdullah, if ever there comes a day in which my brother Hussein asks me to go on this journey with him, that you won't stop me. That's my only condition." Abdullah ibn Ja'far said yes. He accepted. And so when the time came for Imam Hussein to pack his bags and go upon his journey, Lady Zainab came to Abdullah. And Abdullah was an old man, and so he couldn't continue with that journey with Imam Hussein. And so Abdullah said, "O Zainab, if I can't continue, at least you can take these two sons of mine and yours, Aoun and Muhammad. Take them as sacrifices for Hussein. Make sure that they fight valiantly in defending your Imam." And so Lady Zainab takes her two sons, Aoun and Muhammad, with her. And it is said that the night before Ashura, all of the women knew that their sons are going to reach their end on the next day. And so the mothers would surround their sons, and maybe they would comb their hair, and maybe they will give them their final farewell. Maybe they will kiss them because they know that on the next day they're not going to have the chance. And so it is said that Lady Zainab as well prepares Aoun and Muhammad. She combs their hair. She even places the armor on their body. And she says, "Go out and fight for your Imam. Be brave and valiant and courageous for your Imam." And so Lady Zainab takes these two sons of hers towards Imam Hussein to ask for permission. And Imam Hussein, at first, he tries to tell them there's still some more time for you. Go back to the tents. But yet Aoun and Muhammad persist, until finally Lady Zainab herself has to come and ask permission from Imam Hussein. It is said that finally the Imam relents and gives them permission. And Aoun goes out into the battlefield. He fights a brave battle. But finally Aoun is struck to the ground. And then Muhammad says, "Oh Aoun, oh my brother, wait for me, for I am following behind you." And then Muhammad as well goes out into the battlefield and he fights a brave battle. But then finally he falls to the ground. And then Imam Hussein comes towards Aoun and Muhammad, towards his two beloved nephews, and he picks them up and he brings them back towards the tent. But there is no sign of Lady Zainab around. That same lady who showed her love and her compassion towards her two sons. It is said that Lady Zainab, after each one of Ahlul Bayt, after each one of Banu Hashim would fall to the ground, she was the first one who would come to the heads of those shuhada. But at this moment, when Aoun and Muhammad have gone and they have fallen, Lady Zainab is nowhere to be found. It is said that Lady Zainab was in her tent. Maybe she didn't want Imam Hussein to see her tears. Maybe she didn't want to see the bodies of her two sons fallen on the plains, cut to pieces. And so she cried to Allah, saying, Alhamdulillah, thank you for allowing me to give this sacrifice. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ راجعون. مات الحسين.
Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein. आवाज़ मोहम्मद का असर ख़त्म ना होगा, आवाज़ मोहम्मद का असर ख़त्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफ़र ख़त्म ना होगा,
थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा,
थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफ़र ख़त्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफ़र
खत्म ना होगा।
लारेब के रसूल की दोनों है ज़ेब ज़ैन, पहलू में या अली है तो गोदी में या हुसैन,
गोदी में या हुसैन,
लोहो कलम का इल्म का साहिल है या अली, जब जब खुदा का मुल्क है मालिक है या हुसैन,
मालिक है या हुसैन,
ये इल्म का दर सब्र का गर ख़त्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफ़र
खत्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा।
ये सल्तनत इश्क है खुददार मिलेंगे, सलमान व अबू ज़र से वफादार मिलेंगे, सलमान व अबू ज़र से वफादार मिलेंगे, आशिक यहाँ मीसम से जिगरदार मिलेंगे, जीने के लिए मरने पे तैयार मिलेंगे,
तैयार मिलेंगे,
कट जाए जुबान इश्क मगर खत्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज
ये सफर खत्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा।
मुस्लिम बिने अकील सफ़ीरे हुसैन है, हुब्बे अली है दिल में मशीरे हुसैन है,
मशीरे हुसैन है,
वो बादशाह और ये वजीरे हुसैन है, ऐसा वजीर है कि फ़कीरे हुसैन है,
फकीरे हुसैन है,
ताहशर सिफारत का सफ़र ख़त्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफ़र
खत्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा।
हुर को सखी हुसैन ने वसाली बना दिया, ऐसा के पंजतन का सवाली बना दिया,
सवाली बना दिया,
नादे अली ने उसको जलाली बना दिया, रुमाल फातिमा ने मिसाली बना दिया,
मिसाली बना दिया,
ये दर है अताओं का ये दर खत्म ना होगा, थक
जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा, थक जाएगा सूरज ये सफर खत्म ना होगा।
ए मेरे रब्बे जहां, ए मेरे रब्बे जहां, एक अजब इश्क हुआ वो सरे करबो बला, तेरा आशिक है खड़ा खून में डूबा हुआ, दे चुका लख्त जिगर, दे चुका नूर नज़र, दे चुका सारा वो घर, और खंजर के तले उसका सजदे में सर, न नमाज ऐसी आशिक का कलेजा ऐसा, नो के नेजा पे भी करता ही रहा जिक्र तेरा, एक जुल्फ़िकार खल्क में दो हाथ से चली, दस्ते हुसैन खंजाए मुश्किल कुशा अली, ये मुस्तफ़ा की जान वो अल्लाह का वली, दोनों का मर्तबा भी दो आलम पे है जली, दोनों का इस कमाल से सजदा अदा हुआ, हैदर से इब्तिदा हुई या खातिमा हुआ,
हैदर से इब्तदा हुई या खात्मा हुआ,
है वक्त असर मर्जी ये परवरदिगार है, अब पुश्ते जुल्जनाह पे मौला सवार हैं, पहलू में खून रोती हुई जुल्फ़िकार है, हमरा जुल्जना भी बहुत दिल फिगार है, कुर्बान जुल्जना पे और जुल्फ़िकार पर, चलते थे दोनों मर्जी ये परवरदिगार पर,
चलते थे दोनों मर्जी ये परवरदिगार पर,
अल्लाह रे लड़ाई में शौकत हुसैन की, कीजिए जुल्जना में सुररत हुसैन की, कुदरत बगौर तकती थी सूरत हुसैन की, कहरे खुदा से कम न थी हैबत हुसैन की, बोले अली हुसैन, बोले अली हुसैन, बोले अली हुसैन हो अब भी हवास में, ऐसी तो जंग हम न लड़े भूख प्यास में,
जंग हम न लड़े भूख प्यास में,
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
शहने सदादी बहन मर गए जाए तेरे, बिनते शहेबुल हसन मर गए जाए तेरे, हाय वो खुर्शीदो माँ तोड़ के दम कर के आ, दे गए रंजो महन मर गए जाए तेरे, मांग के पानी का जाम हो गए दोनों तमाम, हाय वो तृष्णा दहन मर गए जाए तेरे, बात तलक भी न की खुल्द की बस राह ली, कम सुखनो बेवतन मर गए जाए तेरे, एक तो अतश का वफर, दूसरे जख्मों से जो ऐसे हुए खास्ततन मर गए जाए तेरे खंजरों तलवार से तीरों की बौछार से होते ही जख्मी बदन मर गए जाए तेरे या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो पाबंद ना हो आहें हाय पाबंद ना हो आहें रोने पे न पहरा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो थी जिसको नींद आती शबीर के सीने पर थी जिसको नींद आती शबीर के सीने पर जिंदा दर जिंदा हाय जिंदा दर जिंदा उसके लिए कज़ा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो जिंदानों से आती थी आवाज सिसकने की जिंदानों से आती थी आवाज सिसकने की जैसे के सकीना को हाय जैसे के सकीना को हर जिंदान रो रहा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो टकराए न वो क्यों कर जिंदा की दीवारों से टकराए न वो क्यों कर जिंदा की दीवारों से भाई से और फूफी से हाय भाई से और फूफी से जिसको जुदा किया हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा जिंदा
में न तन्हा हो।
जिंदान में ए नजफी याद आई सकीना की, जिंदान में ए नजफी याद आई सकीना की। दिल रो रो कह रहा है, हाय दिल रो रो कह रहा है, अब ना उजाला हो या रब कोई मासूमा, जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा, जिंदा में न तन्हा हो या रब कोई मासूमा, जिंदा में न तन्हा हो। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलावत।